Okay. Second week in Advent. Last week, John kicked us off. This week is peace. And as John kind of introduced to us last week, we're not just, Advent means coming, and that Jesus came to earth. We celebrate the coming of Jesus coming as a baby, which is great. We love that. We celebrate that. We know that in the birth of Christ, there is the future coming of Easter glory. And we celebrate that. We recognize that. But we also don't want to make Advent just about Jesus came, yippee yippee, now try to act better. But really what we want to focus on this Advent series is Jesus came to earth, and he also came to us. And he came inside of us. He came to change us, to not leave us where we were, but to transform us. So it's not just the coming of the physical baby Jesus, but it's the coming of Christ into our lives, the advent of Christ into our hearts that changes so much. So today is peace. The famous verse we want to start comes from Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, which says, "For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." None of these titles are just for the sake of having more titles behind his name. You guys know those people that want to have all the letters behind their name? This is not what Jesus is doing in Isaiah. These are actual titles of who he is and what he does. He is a wonderful counselor where we are. He is a mighty God no matter what we say or do. He is the everlasting Father because he is well beyond our scope of time. And he is, lastly, and when they do lists, last is important. First and last are always the most important. The Prince of Peace. It's something we always talk about. We always want to put on the walls of Christmas. He is peace. He is peace. He's the Prince of Peace. We love that term, but what does it actually mean? Prince of Peace. We're going to get into that today. We're going to talk about peace, because we're going to start to kind of focus on that too. But peace as a peace that surpasses our understanding. It meets us where we are. It brings to us hope. It brings to us redemption. It brings to us a future. Peace. Not just as stop the fighting, stop the mess, but peace as there is yet coming a day when the world will be better. There is yet coming a day when we will see Jesus face to face. There is yet coming a day when his kingdom will be expansive forever and ever for all eternity. The Prince of Peace. So, okay, and you guys know the drill. This is Rock Haven. If something tips over or lights on fire, you don't just stare there and look at me. You've got to do something. Okay, we're all on the same page with that. Okay, grab your Bibles. Why don't you start by going to the book of Luke chapter 1. We're going to be in a couple different passages this morning, but we're going to start there, or we're going to get there. And John and I sat down and we kind of talked about, we've got these standard things we talk about with Advent. We have faith, we have peace, joy, trust, belief, love, various different themes that you can pick from. There's a whole list of stuff we can pick from. So we kind of want to talk about this, but we don't want to do the same message again and again and again. We want to try to get this from another perspective. And so we talked about what is one thing that would go with peace. What is the necessary peace for us as Christians to have with peace? And we came to the conclusion that I think it's one of the most, for me, it's one of the scariest things for me to do. And what we want to talk about this morning is surrender. And it's a weird word, isn't it? It's a word that I wrestle through because I don't want to do it. I wrestle through this because surrendering isn't necessarily always fun. We know what surrender means. The word is there. It's surrendering. I'm giving up. Or maybe I'm surrendering. Maybe it's like a general surrendering his weapon to the other general and you have won. I'm finally letting you take charge. Maybe it's the surrendering of I'm done trying. You can go ahead and do it. That's the surrendering of things like that. But we're good at surrendering things that we don't want. But we're not good at surrendering things that I want to hang on to. That's the tricky part about this, because it's like, how do I want to hang on to this. I don't want to let go of this. And those are the things that for me are difficult. Those are the things that are scary, but those are also the things that are keeping me from the ultimate peace. Those are the things that are stopping me from finding Christ as my true and sole gaze. The true and sole person who changes everything about me is when I want to try to control and I don't want to surrender things, and he's standing there, just let me have it. Just let me take it from you. Let me have it. And I will bear this up, and I will take it for you, and I will lead you. I want to take this. He's helping us surrender, but at the same time, I don't want to give it up. I don't want to do that. It's all sorts of different situations. And we have to take this in mind with all these things we talk about when we think of the word surrender. We got to distinguish this from the world definition of surrender, because we want to use this word biblically. We want to use it how the Bible talks about surrender. Because we think about, there's a point in our life, and I think we've all been there at one point or the other, where the life is so overwhelming and so full of things, and our mind's just so boggled, and we're tired, and we've been running, and we don't know what's up. I've just got to put one step in front of the other, and you're just like, I don't want to do that. Where's the stop button on the world? You guys know what I'm talking about. Like, this is Christmas season, I feel like. And we just get to this point where we're just like, I'm done. I'm just throwing it in. It is hopeless. That's worldly surrender. That's worldly giving up. That's not biblical surrender. Now, will God maybe meet us in that moment? Yes. But that's not what we're talking about when we're saying surrender. It's not this idea of, I'm done. I'm just giving up on life. I'm giving up on trying. I'm giving up on walking around. I'm giving up on peopling. I'm not adulting today. We don't want to do that. This is, I'm giving up my way. I'm giving up, and here's the word that we like, I'm giving up control. That's the hardest thing, because I don't want to let that go. I want to control my life. I want to have a say. I want to know what's going to happen next. And even when my life isn't going the way that I want it to, even when life isn't happening in the directions that I need it to go, or I think I need it to go, I don't want to let that go, because if I have some finger in it, if I have some grasp on it, then for some reason that gives me a sense of peace. But the reality is that feeling of peace is really anxiety hiding in my heart. And God's saying, let me take it. Let me have it. That's the surrender is we have to, the actual giving up is like, there's a difference between knowing I have to surrender something and actually surrendering something. And that's where we want to get at this morning. So, Luke chapter 1. We have really the perfect example of surrender. We want to go to the latter part of chapter 1. What has just happened in the Christmas story? Mary, mother of Jesus, has been met by an angel who has told her that you will conceive, that you will bear the Son of God. Now, take in mind what's going on in the situation. Mary, a young teenage girl. We don't know ages, but still, young teenage girl has been met by an angel and has been told this is going to happen. This is a really interesting, once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-history type of situation that's happening. Mary's life has just dramatically shifted. She's betrothed. She's engaged to Joseph. She's going to start her life. She's going to live her life. She's got her life kind of figured out what's going to happen next. She knows who she's going to settle down with, that Joseph's got this career. He's going to follow in the footsteps. He's going to be the carpenter. He's going to travel around. He's going to do this type of stuff. And all of a sudden, an angel meets her in the night. And can you imagine the thought of just all of a sudden, my whole life has just changed completely. Absolutely, completely. This isn't a part of her life. This is everything. Everything has now been thrown up in the air. Because who knows what's going to happen? Because you get done with the angel visiting her, and you got to think, what's Joseph going to do? What's my family going to think? What's going to happen now? How am I going to explain this? Oh yeah, you're pregnant, really? Oh yeah, it was God. Who's going to believe that, right? And so we have this situation going on, and Mary responds at the end of verse 38. The angel tells her all these things. And Mary says, behold, I am a servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. And then the angel left. That's a pretty phenomenal response. It's a pretty phenomenal. Even if it's a small thing gets in my way, even if it's one of those things where I have Amazon Prime and I order it and it takes 3 days to get here, woe is me. That's my voice, right? I'm just upset that the world is not going my way. Things that get little hindrances that get in my way, and I'm frustrated of why, God, why is it me? And I joke and I jest, but at the same time, I'm so often influenced by my mood, and that's how I reflect on God. And Mary's life has been completely changed. Her life has been completely put in a different direction. And really what you can say is that her life is now completely found in God. This is not just a change of circumstances. This is a change of her identity. She is no longer just Mary, daughter of such and such, about to marry Joseph. She is now Mary, the mother of Jesus. And she goes on to say her song of praise. So continue to go down a few more verses, starting in verse 46. You can really see Mary's heart here in this passage. And this is why we want to start here, because this is really what surrender is about. Because I know the things that I have to let go, and I know the things that I should let go, and I can even honestly, in my humanness and in my human action, let go of things that I think I should let go because I want to show that I'm trying. And those are the things that are easy. I can give up that, but don't ask me to give up this. I can give up that, but don't ask me to give up this. And it's not even talking about the things that are difficult. He's talking about what's the very core of something what's this about? What is surrender actually about? Is it about just giving up things to make me more disciplined? Is it about giving up things to make me more just better life? It's about changing the heart. That's what this is about. How is God positioning our heart so that we trust in Him in all circumstances, in every situation, regardless of what it is? And here's it's a song of praise. He's just visited Elizabeth, and Mary said, verse 46, "My soul magnifies the Lord." That's not just, yay, Jesus. That's not just, let's praise God together. That's not just one of these together nice sentiments of saying, my soul, my being, my essence, my who I am magnifies Him. Not just I'm praising God, my being magnifies Him. What does magnify mean? That's not a word we use a lot. We sometimes think of it as the same word as praising, but magnify is to make greater of, right? We think of magnifying glass. To magnify the Lord. This is who I am about, is what Mary is saying. This is what I am wired to be. This is what my heart is designed for. This is my mission in life, is to make greater of God and less of me so that He will be seen and not I. My soul and everything that I am and all of my heart is designed to magnify Him. No matter what He asks me to do, and what He's asking me to do right now is my whole life and my whole identity are found in something else that I wasn't part of my plan. What an act of surrender. What an act of gift. What an act of worship on that part. Now, we don't hold Mary to the same status as other churches do. We don't think Mary is perfect. We don't think Mary is, we don't worship Mary herself, but we do look at Mary as an example, as someone who took on something so great and did it so well because she was so following Christ, so following God. And now I often know that because now, in verse 48, He has looked upon the humble estate of His servant. For behold, from now on, all generations will call me blessed. All generations will call me blessed. So how on earth does this fit with peace? We're just talking about surrender. How does this fit with peace? Because if you look at her heart, if you look at this right now, where is she at? She's in a state of surrender, but she's not in a state of surrender and total chaotic turmoil. Her life has been flipped around. Her circumstances in her life are far but easy. But when I read this, I can't help but think she knows where she is, and she knows what she's about, and she knows where her heart is. And I read this, and I don't read this as she's in a chaotic world, but she's at peace with who she is because she knows where her heart is. Because nothing can touch her, nothing can move her, because she has been called by God for a specific purpose, and to know that this is what I'm going to do, and until this purpose is accomplished, God will be there with me. And until my goal in life, until I have walked the days on this earth, God will be with me. that absolute confidence that affects not just her mental attitude of how she approaches life, but her very heart, her very being of everything that I do now is because God has told me what I'm about, and I'm going to walk in that with the utmost confidence that God will never leave me until this is accomplished. That's pretty phenomenal when you start to think about how that affects us, what God has called us to do, and how we have been wired and we have been given a mission and we have been given a purpose and we are to walk in that, and nothing will affect that, nothing will sway that, nothing can deter God from being with us in that until I have walked the allotted number of days in my life. That's just what this is about. You know what that brings at the very core level is a confident peace, because there's nothing that can sway you. There's nothing that can push you out of that. This is why surrender pairs with us so well, because God wants us to be in that sweet spot, that spot where we're walking with Him, where we have placed all our trust in Him, where we have opened our hands and said, I'm done trying my way because I know this doesn't work. I'm done trying to continue to push these things in here because I know this is going to go your way. I'm done doing things my way and asking you just to bless what I'm doing. I'm saying, what are you doing? What are you about, God? How can I be a part of that? Because if you want to see something phenomenal happen, that's what we start with. What are you doing, God, and how can I be a part of that? That's what surrender is about. It's not just surrendering in tough times. It's surrendering our heart and our will and our attitude, because we're not a country club. We're not extracurricular Christians. Christians are who we are, and we live life out of that. So, now flip to the book of Philippians. Okay, we're going to finish out the rest of our time there. We're going to go to Philippians chapter 4. Paul writes this letter from jail, and it is one of the most joyful letters you'll ever read in the Bible. He's writing it to the church in Philippi. And he gets to the end, so this is the very last thing, and he's writing from his encouragement and his prayers, and the final remarks he's saying before he closes out his relatively short letter. And we want to start in verse 4. And you can imagine the situation. The jail where he's at is the jail actually in Ephesus. He's writing to the church in Philippi. And the jail in Ephesus is historically known as being a horrible, horrible place to be. At one point, he was probably chained to other criminals and sometimes chained to other Roman guards. It's a dark, dingy cell. There are no lights. There's no bathrooms. There's no running water. There's no electricity, although he does have Wi-Fi, right? No. This is not a good place. But Paul starts off and he goes out to the end. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say it. Rejoice. Rejoice. This is what Mary was doing. Here's where Mary's heart is. Paul's life has not exactly ended the way that he thought it was going to as well. If you read the book of Philippians, it's really interesting because Paul in there kind of gives us little peeks into his past, into his life. When he was on the fast track to being the high Pharisee, he was on the fast track to being the guy in the Pharisaical realm. He was going to be the top leader. He was trained for that. He gives his statistics. He gives his reputation. He gives his titles out saying, I was a Hebrew of Hebrews. I was circumcised the 8th day. I was all of these things. And then he says, and I count it all as loss, as nothing, as garbage compared to the surpassing worth of knowing Jesus. And his life has totally shifted. He's not living high. He's not living fancy. He's not got any of the stuff that he thought that he was raised, that he was born into. He is now all of a sudden here in a jail cell, chained to a guard, writing a letter, rejoice, rejoice. This is such a good reason to be rejoicing of, because all of a sudden you don't understand. He goes, I've lost everything, but I have gained the most important thing I have ever heard of, and that will ever be talked of. I have gained Christ. And this is the same thing. For me to live as Christ, but to die as gain. Philippians is this phenomenal letter of Paul just saying, my identity is completely found. He's completely surrendered. He's completely given out to what Jesus is doing. And he is absolutely not just at peace, but he is full of joy. This is why it's at Christmas. This isn't the somber message of, oh, I have to surrender now at Christmas time because that's what Joel said and that's what we're supposed to do to follow Jesus, so I will try to do my... No. There is a great peace, a great joy, a great weight lifted off our shoulders when we realize that in this life, in this world, the things that happen are not by coincidence. They're not by accident. They're not things that we just stumble into. They're not things that just happen by happenstance. That we serve a God who is actively involved in everything. That His provisions are unlimited. That His intentionality is all over the place. That we serve a God who doesn't always make sense to my mind, but I'm so busy looking at the finite, minuscule things that I'm missing the grandeur of what God is actually doing. And so here's Paul saying, rejoice, rejoice. My soul magnifies the Lord, and all generations will call me blessed. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone, for the Lord is at hand. Now that word, I thought this was interesting, because why would Paul all of a sudden say, rejoice, rejoice? It's a passage about peace. It's a passage about anxiousness. Why all of a sudden then would Paul stop and say, but let your reasonableness be known? Because we read that differently. Can you be reasonable? Was Paul saying, as you surrender, as you wrestle through the joy of serving Christ, as you surrender parts of your life that God wants to take and to transform into the likeness of Him, as you search for peace in the world, just be reasonable with people. That's not what the word really is getting at, okay? So I had to look this up. So here I am. I'm being the nerd. Just bear with me. The word also means gentle. And that's so interesting to me. That's so interesting, because why would it be reasonable and gentle? That doesn't seem like the same kind of word together. Why on earth would they be paired? Why would that share the same type of meaning in the Greek? But otherwise, I think it's getting at something more than just this idea of, we think of reason, we think of mental activity. Oh, I'm being reasonable. I am being rational. I am using my brain to figure out what's going on in life. And then to be gentle, that's more of how did I live? How do I act? How do I love people? Now combine these together. What are we getting at? Let my heart, this is what Paul's getting at, let it be a heart thing, not a mind thing. So often we get caught up in the Christmas of, I know the answers, I know what this is to be about, I know what I have to say, I know what I have to do. And I've been around church a long time in my life. I know how to act like a Christian. And I know how to even act like a good Christian. I know how to say certain things to act like a good Christian. I know how to appear like a bad Christian who's doing well. I've been around long enough. I've said the things. I know the things. That's what mental Christianity will lead us to. But there's going to come a point when all of our thinking, all of our mental, all of our searching for knowledge, all of our anything in this life, our actions, our doing, our continual systems of implementing the rituals, whatever you want to do, there's going to come to a point when we're going to hit a spot where we can't go any farther. And in front of us is either a brick wall or a chasm. And we don't know what to do, but we know that God's over here, and I know that God's wanting me to go this way, but it's scary because this is beyond what I know, beyond what I can control, beyond what I can do, and that's the point of faith. This is the point when I just have to jump, and I just have to know that I don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but I know in my heart that God is who He says He is, and I won't fall. That's surrender. That's a posture of our hearts. This is what he's getting at. Let your gentleness, let your reasonableness be known to everyone. That's Paul saying, let the fact that your heart is in love with Christ, let that be seen. Let that be known to everyone, because this is how he ends it. This is how we know this is where he's at. Because the Lord is at hand. This isn't some tagline Paul threw in to make it sound more Christian-y. Let your reasonableness be known because the Lord is here. He's around. Christmas, you want to talk about a season where you can't help but walk in and talk about what the season's about? Christmas is like designed for that. You can't, people will say, well, happy holidays. Okay, whatever. You're trying to be generic. Merry Christmas. Christ is literally in the Word. We have an opportunity not to force things down our throats of other people around us, but an opportunity to engage a world that is hopeless. To engage him with saying, hey, I used to be this way. I used to hang on to control. I used to want to control things, and I used to want to do it this way, and I want to make Christmas perfect. And then I have begun to surrender my will and my life and my heart to Christ, and I have begun to enjoy things a whole lot more. Let me just show you what this is about. That people can see that, oh, we are gentle in spirit. We're not caught up. We're not uptight. We're not worked up. We're not being constantly figured out and lost in the details of making sure things are in order. But I'm lost in the detail that we are celebrating that I was dead and lost in sin, but God himself came in flesh to find me and save me. Because that's what Christmas is, not just, yay, Jesus is born, but yay, Jesus has come and Easter is coming. So that's why it fits. Go down to verse 6. Do not be anxious about anything. I used to hate this verse. I'm an anxious person. I am. And I wrestle because the Bible talks about anxiousness a lot. Do not be anxious. Do not be anxious. Do not be anxious. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm trying. And it's sitting here, I'm like, what am I doing wrong as a Christian? What am I doing that why can't I let this go? Why do I continually get bogged down in my own head? And this is where I think the battle really is. And this is where we have to be aware of the deviousness of our enemy. Because he's not just about, sometimes we think that there's going to be this big black door and we're going to be like, okay, I'll stay away from the black door because that's kind of obvious because that's where Satan's at. I think he's much more subtle. He's much more subtle. And this is one of the ways in anxiety where he's at. He's not just about saying, do bad things, but in anxiety, he's pitting us against ourselves. Don't just, worry about this, worry about that. Don't think about Jesus for just a minute. But it's more just this idea of now that we're worked up a little bit and things are kind of making us concerned and things are making us worried and I feel a little overwhelmed. And then we start to think about those other times when I felt overwhelmed, or maybe the what if situation, what if this happens, or what if that happens. And before we know it, we're spinning in our own head. I'm trapped in a corner trying to outthink myself to get around myself. It's just a mess. That's the subtlety, the deviousness of what this is about. So don't be anxious about anything. It's more, I'm trying, but in everything. This doesn't say if you just change your way you're thinking, it'll go away. This doesn't say if you just change your thought and think about Jesus, the anxiety will disappear. Don't be anxious. He says it again and again and again because he knows that we're going to wrestle with it. Don't be anxious, but in everything, by prayer and thanks and supplication, which is a fancy word for asking in prayer, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. That's how we combat this. We surrender it. We lay it down. And I think this is something simple. Sometimes we're just like, I don't know how to let go of things. Well, it's because it's hard to let go of things. But this is where the honesty in prayer comes in. I think this is so freeing. When I learned this was so life-changing for me. But the fact of saying, God, I know I need to let this go, but I don't know how to let this go. Can you teach me how to let this go? I think that's a really good prayer. To be honest with God, saying, I need you to take this from me because I can't seem to let it go. I can't seem, and it's causing me to not focus on you. It's causing me to not abide in you. It's causing my peace to be gone. But in everything about life that's causing us worry, concern, chaos, distraction, lay it down in front of him and say, can you take this from me? Please take this from me. Because here's where it comes in verse 7. I think this is where we're the key verse here of this text. And the peace of God, we're going back to peace now, which surpasses all understanding. Some of us have had that moment where we've been in life and it's been crazy and we've been overwhelmed and all of a sudden it's just peace. And we don't know why. I can't explain it. I have no rationale on how to understand why this happened the way it did. All of a sudden, I just have it. That's a peace that passes understanding. I cannot explain why I'm okay in this moment. I cannot explain it to you. I just have no words, no rationale. Again, we're going back to that, the be reasonable. I can't be reasonable because I don't know how to be reasonable with this. Because sometimes the things that God do are beyond my understanding and beyond my reason. And if I'm truly honest, I'm glad that they are. Because I don't want to serve a God I fully understand. Because then he wouldn't be God. I want God to be beyond me. I want to be continually searching and seeking the depths of God and enjoying the seeking and contemplating God. I want to enjoy that. I love to seek God, but I never want to find the entirety of Him. Because the reality is, we cannot find the entirety of Him. So when He does things, there's going to be things in this life that I will not understand. And I need to come to that point. And this is a point of surrender where I'm saying, and I like that. I'm okay with not knowing how or why or the what's, but I like that you are here. I know that I'm giving this to you, God, because I'm just enjoying being in the moment. I'm just enjoying being at your feet. I'm just enjoying abiding in your presence. I'm just loving every minute of this. I may not understand what you did, but you did it. And there's an absolute joy in surrendering that. And it doesn't mean we just throw out all of our mental, it doesn't mean we throw out all of our seeking, it doesn't mean we throw out our thoughts. But there's a point when it's like, I just want to seek you, Jesus, for who you are and enjoy the seeking. Not the finding, the seeking of you, because I already have you. There's a great joy in that. And it surpasses understanding. It's just going to do it. And it will guard your hearts and your minds. I like that. It's not just a peace, and then the world and the chaoses and the troubles of the world tend to leak back in again, but it will guard them. It will guard our hearts. It will guard our minds in Christ, because we are in Christ and Christ is in us. It will guard us. That peace will continue to be there. It will continue to usher us in. It will continue to draw us close. It will continue to be more solid. It will continue to look down. You guys ever read the Psalms and you realize a lot of the imagery they use is the rock? He talks about the rock which I will not be moved on, and God is a steadfast rock, and he uses it a lot. And imagine if we were in the midst of chaos and we're working on this peace, we don't understand the peace, and as we spend more time with God and we surrender more and more, and I think you just imagine as we look down spiritually, and you can imagine that I'm not being moved in this life far less than I used to, because I'm realizing that I'm standing on the rock. I didn't make the rock. I can't construct a rock. It's just been there. And it's always going to be there. And the waves are lapping and racking around. You know, you can see those really good pictures of the wave coming and splashing and going around the rock, and the rock doesn't move. That's me standing in the storms of life in a peace that passes understanding, because God is unmovable and unshakable. No one moves God. We are found on that. That's what surpasses understanding. I don't even understand how this works, but here I stand. And that's what's going to guard us. That's what's going to protect us. That's where we continue to go back again and again and again. So verse 8, I grew up with this verse being this is what you do to have good thoughts type of verse. Finally, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And so I used to be like, okay, how do I think about this? Is this honorable? Is this just? Is this praiseworthy? And I have to go through the list. You're trying to think, is that, oh, I listened to that song. Oh, there's that. Maybe that part wasn't so. And I analyze everything through this, and I want this to be a lens. But as I was reading that, here's what this, I think, really is more than what we want it to be. Anything worthy of praise. That's the final line there. And it's very, very, very important. Because what is worthy of praise? I know of one thing. I know of one thing that is worthy of praise. Now, do I give praise to other things? I do, and I shouldn't. One thing that is worthy of praise, and that is Christ himself. That's what I should think about. Well, Joel, I can't spend my whole life just being like, I have to work, I have to drive. I can't not thinking about turning left on a busy street. I got to think about Jesus and not get an act. No, okay, we're overthinking this, right? But Christ can affect everything that we do think about. It's not the list that we look through to see the world, but it's Christ in us that now we see the world as what is praiseworthy. Is it just Christmas for the sake of Christmas, or is it Christmas for the sake of Christ coming to earth? Is it work for the sake of work, or is it work because Christ has given me a purpose in my work? Is it life for the sake of life, or is God, am I walking every step with a purpose because this is Christ in me, and my whole perspective has changed? Again, going back to, we look at Mary. Mary's not just saying, okay, you can have the next 18 years, God, and then I'm out. This is a life identity shift. She's like, my soul and everything about me is praising the Lord, whether it's this or anything else. Her life was absolutely found in Christ. Her whole identity was found, this is who I am, and she was happy as can be. And this is what they're calling. It's not just, if you think about these things, then maybe they're holy. But everything in our life should be affected by the reality that Jesus is in us, and that changes things. Because he is worthy of praise. He is the transforming power. There's a song, I think many of us have heard it. I'm sure Mariel has. And it says, "Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face." And this is the line I really like. "And the things of this earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace." The world grows dim when we start to look at something that's bright, when we look at something that's true, when we look at something that's pure, when we look at something that's worthy of praise. Everything else in this world just kind of seems blah. Just kind of blah. How many years ago was it when the Eagles won the Super Bowl and Nick Foles was the quarterback? And I remember it was either Nick Foles or Kurt Warner, one of the two, but they asked him, "How is it? You just won the Super Bowl." And he says, "You know, this really isn't that much compared to worshiping Jesus." Of course, they cut that out of the news, right? That's a pretty phenomenal thing. Everything seems kind of dim. The grand event, millions and millions of people watch it. It's not as good as Jesus. That's pretty cool. What is worthy of praise? That's, I think, someone who has surrendered up, saying, you know, it's just football. It's just a game. It's just the Super Bowl. But Jesus, let me tell you about him, Jesus. "What you have learned," this is verse 9, "and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you." Okay, as I'm wrapping up, Mary, I want you guys to start to make your way up. And if you're a Bible underliner, there's something important. It's the peace of God will be with you. We don't want to ignore prepositions. They've heard me say this before, and I'm going to nerd out every single time. With you is important. It's not that the peace of God will be around you. It's not the peace of God will be at hand. It's not the peace of God will be available with you. Because who is the peace of God? Isaiah 9:6, the Prince of Peace. And he is with you. He's not abandoning you. He's not leaving you. He is with you. God himself walks with us in trials, in chaos, in life. And he's like, let me carry that. Let me help you. Let me take that. Why don't you give me a little bit more? And the things that stop us are our pride, our selfishness, our wanting to control. And we wrestle with anxiety, at least I do, and saying, God, why am I so anxious? And he's just, for me, he's saying, well, yeah, because you're not letting me carry it. Okay. He is with us, and that is our peace. When we believe that we should be satisfied rather than God glorified in our worship, then we put God below ourselves as though he had been made for us rather than that we had been made for him. As we surrender, we put God rightly where he is, and we put ourselves rightly where we are. And I'm not asking you to surrender just to be like, I give up. But maybe the better way is to say, I want you to give in. Give in to the peace that God offers. Give in to the life and the power and the surrender that Jesus gives us when we say, yep, I'm done trying to control it. I'm done trying to do it my way. I'm done trying to manufacture things and make it right. I'm just in on what you're doing. And there is a relief. There is a weight lifted. There is a joy and a peace that passes understanding when we say, yep, I'm done. Have a great Sunday, guys. Please contact me with questions. See you later.